One common use for saving and loading is keeping track of changes in our project as time goes on. In this example, we'll be keeping track of a few collectibles in our world. And then when we load the project back up, we'll go ahead and remove those items since we've already collected them. Running through our project, if I go ahead and hit play, we have a few collectibles you can see just spinning around the world. Once we collect enough of these, the main door will open. So we've got two of them collected. We can see in the bottom right, we have one left. We collect the third one. Our door opens up and we could go in and then we could finish by collecting our relic. Now, let's say this is a larger project and this took me 20 minutes and then I wanted to come back later to play. All of my items would be reset. And that's not really something we want the user to experience. Now, these objects exist in our world. These are instances of actors. So they have unique properties to them, but we can't save out actual actors. We couldn't say, for example, okay, I collected this item. Let's save out all of its information. And then when we load the game back up, we can load its information back up. We can't do that. We need some other way of identifying these items to work with them later. And one easy way, because remember, we're dealing with raw data, raw variable information, basic types, is to create a unique ID. If you've ever played like an online game or ever done something maybe in a spreadsheet, you have unique IDs. We could go in and we could take our blueprint. So I'm going to go to our blueprint folder and go into my pickup. And we could make a new variable called ID. So I'll make a new variable. I'm going to call it ID. I'm going to change it to type string, compile and save, and then I could type 1 or 2 or A75 or coin 1, coin 2, coin 3. But what if I add more coins later and then I forget where I'm at? Well, then I have to go and find it. Or we could try to make something that's automated. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to take advantage of our construction script. So on the left, we have construction script. I'll double click to open it up. This is something that runs when the item is constructed or when we're working in the editor and we move it around. Generally only fired once. And the nice thing is we can use this to generate unique identifiers. If we right click and we type in GUID, we have the ability to work with GUIDs. And these are basically unique identifiers that are long enough where they're really not going to conflict. You could generate them over and over and over and almost basically impossible to conflict. So if we generate a new GUID right here and we save this out, we can make sure we have a unique identifier for every single item. And all we have to do is add a new coin into the level. The construction script runs and we'll get a new ID. But this ID is of type ID and we want to make it easier. So we're going to make it a string. And we're going to store it in our ID, as we can see here. We'll drag off ID, we'll set it, and then all we have to do is drag off of our new ID return value, and it won't be compatible with string. So we can actually type in string, and you'll see toString GUID. And now we can connect it. And now whenever we run the construction script, we're going to get this to run, and we'll get a new GUID. But we want them to be unique and we don't need them to keep changing because if they kept changing, then every time we load our project, we'd end up with a new ID. So we're only going to want to set the ID if it's not set. Simple as that. So we're going to go ahead and grab our ID from our left and get it. And then we're going to type in equal. So is it equal to nothing? Drag off the return value, type in if. We're going to pull out a branch. We're going to hook our construction script up to the branch. So if our ID is equal to nothing, then we want to create a new ID. Hook up the true from our branch to our set, and now our construction script is set up. Now I can go ahead and click the eyeball here on the left to make it public, so that way we can examine this actually working. Compile and save again. Go back into our map, and we'll click on one of our pickups. And you can see right here we have an ID. And if I was to move this item around, that ID is not changing. We could actually reset a couple times to get some different IDs. You can see how long and unique this is. If it conflicts, we're in trouble if we somehow conflict with the GUID. And we have our nice unique ID. And if I was to, for example, take a new blueprint and drop it into our world, It's got its own unique ID. And then we don't have to worry about conflicts, and we don't have to worry about assigning these by hand. So now that we have our unique ID, we need some way to talk to these pickups. And we need some way to get the identifier. And we need some way to tell this pickup, okay, you've already been picked up, so do something. In our case, we're going to destroy the actor, which will basically act like it was picked up because we've already picked up. One easy way to handle something like this is by using blueprint interfaces. Now, we could hard code that information, but what if our pickup was more than just coins? What if it was some other item? Maybe it was food or treasure chests we interacted with or doors we opened up. This gives us the ability to generically change the state of an item at runtime. Let's go into our classes. We're going to right click. We're going to go to blueprint interface. I'm going to name this BPI underscore, and we'll call this interactable. This will be our interface that will be on any item we want to interact with, and it will have our interaction events. We'll open it up by double clicking. I'll go and dock it at the top to make it easier. It comes with one function by default, so we're going to actually have two of these. One of them is going to be to get the identifier from the object, so we'll simply call this one get ID. So that way, when we talk to our items generically, we can say, hey, what's your ID number? And then compare that to our stored list. So that means it's going to have to give us that information. So in the bottom right under outputs, we're going to go new parameter. For the name, we're going to call this one the ID. And it's going to be of type string. We'll compile and save. And this one's done. And then the other one is just our generic, hey, you've already been messed with. We've already picked you up. We've already opened you. We've already collected your loot. We've already stepped on you. It's the ability to generically change our state. So on the top right, we'll add a new function. And we'll call this one simply change state. And all this is going to allow us to do is we're going to call it and change the state on the item. Compile and save. Our interface is now done. Inside of our pickup, now we need some way to actually work with these interfaces. Blueprint interfaces are set up under class settings. And then on the right in our details panel, we have the implemented interfaces. We'll click add. Here is our blueprint interface interactable. We'll go ahead and compile and save. And here's something that's nice. If we go on the left and we expand our interfaces, we already have any of those interfaces that were set up in our blueprint interface ready to work with. So we're going to want change state and get ID. If we double click on any of these, well, you notice nothing really works for change state because it's an event that's sitting in our project and we haven't set it up. But get ID is a function because it returns something and it's already ready for us to work with. Now it's asking us to return our ID. That's simple enough. We'll drag our ID out of our variable list and drop it onto the return node. And now whenever we call this, well, our ID is going to be returned to us. Okay, that's easy enough. What about changing the state? Well, we can right click on it and we have implement event. We'll go and click on that. And now we have our event change state ready to go. The nice thing is this is generic. We can call this on different items and each item can implement it however they want. In our case, the state that gets changed on this item is the collectible gets destroyed. Whenever we overlap with the player, we destroy the item. When the item is destroyed, we tell the game mode it's been collected. So all we have to do is drag off, type in destroy actor. You'll notice destroy actor is again what we use up here when we overlap it with the player. And that's all we need to do. Whenever we want to interact with this item, whenever we want to change its state after we are loading up from a save game, we'll call event change state and it's going to destroy the actor. Now this was setting up our one object. This is the same basic process if you wanted to set up multiple objects. We would just implement our interface, implement getting our ID and changing the state, and we'd be done and they'd be easy enough to all be interacted with generically. So let's look at actually saving out our unique information and then loading it back up.